Do you know that if you woke up in the morning and then you said, who do I want to be when I open my eyes? What thoughts do I want to think? What thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? Let me plan my behaviors today. I'm going to leave my sadness and pain behind, and I'm going to open my heart, and I'm going to feel gratitude. I'm going to feel joy. I'm going to feel inspiration. Your job is to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day. They're spending the majority of their time waiting and not creating, living in lack, living in emptiness, living in fear, waiting for that external event to take away their emptiness or pain. That's the Newtonian model of reality, of cause and effect. Turns out, though, the moment you're feeling that lack, you tend to try harder and force and control and try to predict or manipulate the outer world because you're doing everything you can because you're experiencing a separation or polarity from what you want. You're waiting for it to happen and not creating. 86% of the people that have a smartphone, the first thing they do when they wake up is they do their WhatsApp, their text, their Facebook. They take a picture of their feet, they post it on Facebook. Then they do their Instagram, take a picture of their cat, and then they link in and they check one email, the other email, they check the news, and now their attention is on everything known in their life. They reaffirm their identity, and then they go through all those routine behaviors. 95% of them, they're not even present and conscious, or they're remembering their problems in their past. There are two very important windows that open up that allow your body and your brain to be more suggestible to information. That is, when you wake up in the morning, your brain waves go from very slow delta to theta to alpha to beta. And when you go to bed at night, you go from beta to alpha, theta to delta. So you slide up the scale when you wake up, and you slide down the scale when you go to bed at night. And most people, when they go to bed at night, they just go from beta, boom, right down the delta. They fall very quickly. You can teach people then how to just sit and slow everything down and begin to visualize, begin to affirm, begin to change their thought, to begin to work with their body. And it seems, according to our research, that those changes can last. So what do most people do when they wake up in the morning? Your brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact, a memory bank of everything you've learned and experienced to this moment. So people wake up in the morning and they start thinking about their problems. And those problems are memories in the brain that are connected to certain people and certain things at certain times and places. So they wake up in the morning and they start thinking in the past. Now, the moment they start having those thoughts, every one of those experiences has an emotion associated with it. So when they start thinking about their problems, or the problems of the world, or the problems of their body, or whatever it is, problems at work, they all of a sudden start to feel the correlated emotion. So now their body's in the past. So now people then get caught up in an emotion. They reaffirm their identity. They could wake up in the morning and feel nothing at all. And then all of a sudden they say, well, wait a second, I got to get back to myself. So they start thinking about their problems, and here come the emotions. And they say, oh, now I feel like me again. So those emotions then begin to influence our thoughts. Like if you feel like a failure, you're going to think you're a failure. And when you think you're a failure, you're going to feel like a failure. And when you feel like a failure, you're going to think more thoughts equal to being a failure. And the cycle of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking causes you to say, I am a failure. And the repetition of that process of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking conditions the body to become the mind of that emotion. Now the emotion is stored in the body. Now the body's literally in the past. And the body, as the unconscious mind, doesn't know the difference between the actual experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion that you're creating by thought alone. Your body's believing it's in the same experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So then getting people out of the past is the work. So then they wake up in the morning after they reaffirm who they are and they can't think greater than how they feel, they're in the familiar past. So if you're in the familiar past, you're going to do the things that reaffirm the emotions of your predictable future. So you wake up in the morning, you check your WhatsApp, you check your text, you check your Twitter, you tweet, you check your Facebook, you check your email, you check the news. Now you are really connected to everything that's known in your life. And then you run through a series of routine behaviors. You move around your house the same way you always do. You do all the same things. You go to the same grocery store. You buy the same food. You shop the same way. You do all these, you watch the same TV shows. And people do this for 10, 20, 30 years. Now, their body's on autopilot.
and their body's dragging them into a predictable future based on what they did in the past. We could actually take their yesterday and lift it up and set it on their tomorrow, which means then they've lost their free will to a program.
So then, two things. When you combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion, a heart-centered emotion, not the emotions of survival that are anger and hostility and aggression and competition or hatred or envy or jealousy or insecurity or fear or anxiety or pain or suffering or guilt or shame. Those are derived from the hormones of stress. An elevated emotion is a heart-centered emotion. And a heart-centered emotion lacks polarity. This is the center of oneness. This is the center of wholeness. This is the union of opposites. This is our connection, our bridge to the quantum field. This is where we connect. So think about it. When you begin to feel a heart-centered emotion, what you're doing is you're falling in love with your life. So your body is your unconscious mind. It does not know the difference between an experience that creates an emotion and an emotion that you're creating by thought alone. Your body is believing it's living in that future reality in the present moment. Now think about this. The latest research on genes says the environment signals the gene. Well, the end product of an experience in the environment is called an emotion. So when you begin to embrace the emotion ahead of the actual experience, you're signaling the gene ahead of the environment. And now you're beginning to instruct and select new genes that make new proteins. And proteins are responsible for the structure and function of your body. So you're literally becoming your dream. You're literally becoming it. So when you feel that emotion, you tend to be less interested in looking around outside of you of how it's going to happen. If you're walking around conditioning your body every day to feel that emotion, that you're in love with yourself and you're in love with life and you're worthy to receive and you're open and you're inspired and you're optimistic and you're enthusiastic and you're feeling that emotion, you feel like your future has already happened. So you're less likely to feel lack or separation. Now think about this. Point number 2. Once energy makes it to the center and you feel gratitude, that center begins to produce a measurable magnetic field. That's a frequency, that's energy, and all frequency carries information. So now you can lay the thought of your new relationship on that frequency, and now you're broadcasting a whole new electromagnetic signature into the field. So then the longer you're conscious of that energy, the more you're calling your future to you. When this center is opened up, you're connected to the quantum field. So now you don't have to go anywhere to get it, to try to force it or control it or predict it. In fact, you're the magnet. You're collapsing time and space, and the event is being drawn to you.
So people get very happy being unhappy because they would rather cling to their unhappiness than take a chance in possibility. So stepping into that river and beginning to make a new choice and understanding that that uncertainty, that unpredictability is the unknown. Now you're in that river of change, and it is the neurological, the biological, the chemical, hormonal, genetic death of the old self. People say to me, well, if there's uncertainty, I can't predict my future. And I always say the same thing. The best way to predict your future is to create it. Not in the known, right there. That uncertainty. You can learn now how to regulate your state. Instead of living in fear because the idea that things are going to get worse, the idea that you can't predict, the idea of being uncertain or can't control something actually sets off the stress response. So now you're in the unknown and the survival gene is switched on. Of course, people are going out of the infinite possibilities that exist in the quantum field. They're going to select the worst scenario in their mind, right? So then what if you're in the unknown and you understand that, and now you can work back into that present moment and you say, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain, put my attention behind? What behaviors today, one day, what behaviors do I want to demonstrate? And the act of closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing who you're going to be when you open your eyes begins to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like you've already done it. Now the brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. So by rehearsing mentally and doing it over and over again, the hardware becomes a software program, and who knows, you just might start acting like a happy person. Well, there's no magic there. You install the circuitry. You may start thinking in more unlimited ways. You put those circuits in place. Now, here's the tough part. Can you teach your body emotionally what that future is going to feel like before it's made manifest. That means you can't wait for your healing to feel gratitude and wholeness. You can't wait for your wealth to feel worthy and abundant. You can't wait for your new lover to feel love. That's the old model of reality of cause and effect. Waiting for something outside of us to take away our emptiness and pain that we feel inside of us. That's Newtonian, cause and effect. The quantum model of reality is about causing an effect. That means the moment you start feeling worthy and abundant, you're generating wealth. The moment you're in love with yourself and you're in love with life, you create an equal. Well, the moment you start feeling gratitude and wholeness, your healing actually starts to begin.
Quantum physics says that your mind and matter are so intimately connected that it's impossible to separate the two. That matter has a mind, and mind is in matter. And you can't pull them apart. And so in quantum physics, it's amazing because when they started studying the very tiny particles in atoms, like electrons and photons, they expected that those particles would behave like planets rotating around the sun. Predictably, but they don't. They respond to mind. And so now, all of a sudden, the quantum physicist comes along to measure the electron. And the electron goes from a wave of possibility, and all that energy collapses into a particle, and it's called collapsing the wave function. They turn their back and no longer look and observe the electron, and it turns back into energy. So mind is affecting matter. So, in other words, if you wake up every morning and you do the same thing that you've been doing for the last 10 years, then you're caught in the predictable world of Newtonian physics. And if you're doing the same thing over and over again, we can take your past and lift it up and set it on your future, and it's going to be exactly the same. So then if you're viewing your life from the same level of mind every single day, then you are collapsing the same possibilities into the same reality. So if you teach people then to find the present moment, in quantum physics, all possibilities exist in the present moment. But most people's brains are anticipating the future based on the past, and they're not present. So then it requires training and practicing finding the present moment and beginning to change their habits and their thoughts and their behaviors. Most people don't know this, but there's an invisible field of energy around your body. And when you react to someone or something, you draw from this invisible field and you turn it into chemistry. And the field around your body shrinks. And now you're more matter and less energy. You're more particle and less wave. And most people then, when you are matter trying to change matter, you always try to force the outcome. You try to control the outcome. You try to predict the outcome. And people then get competitive, or they hold on, or they manipulate, or they cheat, or they steal, because that's the only way they can get what they want.
So then the word meditation literally means to become familiar with. That's what that word means. So the biological model is you got to become familiar with your unconscious thoughts. You got to become aware of your unconscious habits and behaviors. You got to become so familiar with your emotional state, saying, oh my God, I've been feeling guilt for the last 10 years. I didn't know it was guilt. It just felt like me. So then as you begin to observe those states of mind and body, consciously you're no longer the program. You're the consciousness observing the program, and you start pulling consciousness out of our biology, objectifying our subjective self. Now, that overcoming process is the most important part of this work, because once you overcome it, you're no longer looking at your future through the lens of the past. In your brain and in your body, chemically and emotionally, you're seeing possibilities. So then it's natural, once you've disentangled from those programs, to start thinking differently, to start acting differently, to start feeling differently. And as you start thinking differently, firing and wiring, and you start installing the circuits and rehearsing who you're going to be, you start behaving differently, you start feeling differently. You keep doing that, it's going to become familiar to you. And over time, as you overcome those aspects of yourself, you're actually becoming somebody else. There's a becoming process that begins to take place. And some people do it very quickly, Other people, it just takes some time. But once you understand the formula, and once you understand what it all means, you start seeing people make some pretty big changes.